If you've already been listening to our message, you'll know that the Democrats and Veterans are absolutely committed to stopping people like Theresa May, who last week agreed on your behalf openly to facilitating the South African government with £4 billion of your hard-earned taxes in the act of quite literally stealing land from law-abiding citizens in Africa who happen to be born with the wrong skin colour, so that her globalist friends in big business can siphon away the country's considerable wealth from natural resources into offshore bank accounts while destroying swathes of medium and small businesses, crashing that nation's economy, forever destroying its reputation, and no doubt committing it to the very same course of famine and untold human suffering, desperation and crime as was just pioneered by Zimbabwe, who followed exactly the same legal course just a few years ago. And all this while lining the pockets of South African bureaucrats whose cooperation they need and who are sadly no less corrupt and willing to work under the new corporate colonialism that is similarly working from within Brussels and Strasbourg to transfer hard-earned wealth from the ordinary people into the hands of corrupt elites, whether in governments or big business. To those who have been listening to us, you will know that we do not believe that party politics can deliver Britain from its present condition, a condition in which there's only the illusion of democracy, but in which all the significant decisions that affect our nation's financial, social and moral future are actually made by people over whom you have no legal influence. By those people that call the shots and pull the strings, massive vested interests that have ultimate control over the way members of Parliament vote through their lobbyists and party whips, such that irrespective of what is the clear will of the British people, like leaving the European Union and getting our sovereignty back, controlling our borders, having a fair, sensible immigration policy that keeps wages high enough to pay the mortgage without getting into debt to the big banks, and allows the NHS to do the job it was created to do, providing national health service, and having the legislative means and administrative control to re-establish the very law and order for which Britain was always historically renowned. No, the only way that Britain can be delivered from this corrupt corporate tyranny that has hijacked our democracy is if all good patriots that believe in Britain and have greater trust in the innate common sense and decency of the ordinary hard-working men and women of this country than they do in our treasonous political class. Now, the only way is if they unite together with one aim, and that is to take back control from the usurpers in Westminster and hand over this control to the people. And this will never be achieved through party politics. There's only one mechanism by which true democracy and the assertion of the will of the people on Parliament and on lawmaking processes in this country will ever be possible. And that is, if good men and women from throughout Britain, people who have not been defiled by party politics and will not bring with them their Machiavellian baggage, people who are trusted by their communities and who genuinely want to work in the interests of our country, if such people can unite, working together in an alliance that does not require them to conform to any arbitrary rules or agenda, other than that of being faithful to our nation's safe and trusted constitution and in honouring the will of the people, only then can we expect true freedom, fairness and justice in Britain. And some of you may be listening to me asking yourself the question, why, if I don't believe in party politics, did I then start a political party, the Democrats and Veterans? And while legally the Democrats and Veterans is indeed registered with the Electoral Commission in order to compete in elections, you should understand that we created the organisation purely as a vehicle to unite like-minded patriots from around Britain in being able to work together towards one goal, and that is to oppose our corrupt establishment and assert the will of the British people over government. And if it were possible to have registered a non-party alliance instead of an actual political party and still have the legal means to work collaboratively throughout the country on elections, we would have done so. Because what we actually want to see is a growing, eventually massive network of independent candidates in every constituency, in every ward and in every parish. People who are only connected to us for the purposes of facilitating communication and receiving campaign support, but who once elected do not answer to a party, but being truly independent candidates, they only answer to their constituents, but who of course remind their constituents of the safe and necessary constitutional limits within which they have the right to work. Legislative limits that must always be maintained so as to forever continue to secure the inalienable rights of the individual, freedom of speech, liberty of conscience, and rights of ownership. And you know, to this end, I am incredibly excited to be able to tell you that over the last couple of months, we have been working very hard indeed behind the scenes in creating such an alliance. And if you love Britain and you care about the future we're going to leave to our children, and if you're able to get to Barnsley, pretty much bang in the middle of the country, I would love for you to come along and join us. On Friday and Saturday, 14th to 15th of September, we're hosting an incredibly exciting, quite frankly, historic event. This will be an opportunity to come and meet some amazing people and to hear their ideas and perhaps share some of your own ideas with them about how to better embrace the mission of defeating our corrupt elite. If you want to come along and join us, you don't have to be a member of our organisation. The only qualification we ask for is that you love Britain and believe in our nation's constitution. A constitution that, remember, demands that no foreign prince, person, prelate, state or potentate hath or ought to have any jurisdiction, power, superiority, preeminence or authority within this realm, and whether that be the European Union, the European Court of Justice, Mecca, or for that matter, Rome. And absolutely in keeping with our total lack of interest in party politics, most of our speakers actually have no political affiliation. They're simply committed patriots who are thoroughly accomplished in their respective fields and who, like us, are determined to work for the good of this nation and to fight the many evils that are right now ruining it. As well as, of course, some of the excellent members of our own leadership team, I am very excited to be able to mention 10 of the 30 or so speakers that you can expect to enjoy when you decide to come along. Firstly, Lance Bombardier, Ben Parkinson, MBE of 7 Para Royal Horse Artillery. Ben is a national hero and is Britain's most seriously wounded soldier to survive being injured in Afghanistan. Ben absolutely epitomises what we want to see in those who choose to work with us. Incredible loyalty and faithfulness in the face of massively overwhelming odds. Tenacity and the indomitable spirit that made our nation so great and our armed forces without doubt the best in the world, in spite of its ever shrinking size, which is of course a situation the Democrats and veterans will immediately reverse when we're given the opportunity. Secondly, I am immensely privileged to be able to welcome this next person to speak, who has served as a great inspiration and encouragement to me personally for many years, with his confident refusal to cave into pressure to be politically correct. One of Britain's greatest champions of free speech, and someone who convinced me that there is still hope for politics in Britain for those who are willing to speak the truth. An ardent lover of liberty and someone who has an excellent and fluent grasp of how Britain can be massively more prosperous outside the European Union. And finally, someone that absolutely should play a leading role in uniting the interests of our excellent allies across the Atlantic with those of our own. The incomparable Godfrey Bloom. I can't wait to hear what he has to tell us on Friday. And for those who are interested in the potential massive opportunities afforded by direct democracy in establishing Britain as the most prosperous, fair and just democracy in the world, but who are concerned about issues such as the concept of a potential tyranny of the majority, I'm delighted to welcome William Keat, who will be talking about our nation's constitution and the sense in which it is such a complete safeguard, if enforced, against all the abuses that have been perpetrated by successive administrations that have contravened it, without our ever realising that we have the power to challenge them. Next we have Caroline Stevens, a brave and tenacious lady who is one of only a handful of prominent people willing to talk about hugely underrepresented issues that have a massive negative impact on our democracy and our nation's ability to deliver fairness and justice to the people. Caroline will be talking both about the incredible dangers posed by the European arrest warrant and will be sharing her insights on how we may all unite, irrespective of party affiliations, to defeat our tyrannous government. Next, Sir William Jaffrey, famous for having the courage to stand up to massive financial interests nearly 20 years ago, and with a relentless resolve to confront our corrupt bureaucrats. William founded an organisation called Democracy 17.4, has a great depth of knowledge and an excellent grasp of strategy. You definitely won't be disappointed about what he has to say. David Ellis. This patriot is one of the best informed on what is happening with Britain's military and the dastardly actions happening behind the scenes to give away control of our armed forces to foreign interests. He'll be updating us on the present status of Westminster's knavish tricks in this regard. Mark Steele will be speaking about 5G and the government's plan to allow, without proper consultation, a network of highly powered radio wave emissions to be installed throughout our country and the potentially devastating consequences for health and the country's wildlife. Next, I'm incredibly excited to have Rusty Furman talk to us. Rusty led one of the assault teams on the most famous hostage rescue mission in history on the 5th of June 1980, when terrorists invaded the Iranian embassy in London. There was an excellent film made about him recently called 6 Days, in which Rusty was played by the young actor Jamie Bell. If you want to know more about Rusty, I'd strongly recommend you immediately go out and buy his book, The Regiment, 15 Years in the SAS. Rusty is one of the most courteous and gentlemanly soldiers you'll ever meet and embodies so much of what I would like to see in Britain: humility, humour, discipline, courage, and the unrelenting pursuit of excellence. Rusty will be talking to us about Britain's veterans. And speaking just a couple of slots ahead of me, someone for whom I have huge respect. Someone who has been attacked by those very people who ought to have been working with him, and who has always calmly taken it on the chin, actually showing compassion and understanding and gentleness towards those very people who have maligned him and spread falsehoods about him. All because of his unquenchable devotion to some of the most vulnerable and cruelly abused victims in British society. This man is John Wedger. John has shown great bravery in standing up to the establishment in spite of much personal sacrifice and threats and attempts to intimidate him. John is one of Britain's foremost champions against the wickedness of paedophilia in Britain. But a distinguishing characteristic for which I have great admiration for John is that he is not interested in merely talking about the issue. Instead, he has spoken with me about what we can actually do to make a real practical difference in the lives of these victims and how we can start the process of bringing these evil criminals to justice. And finally, just before my own address, we have a very outspoken speaker. I'm afraid I cannot disclose his identity just yet. All I can say is that he is a member of the European Parliament and is working incredibly hard towards its destruction, and that he's a prominent champion of liberty. But if you want to know who he is, you're going to have to come along and meet him for yourself. And closing this conference, this 2-day networking event, where you'll have the opportunity to meet with and share your ideas with people that I believe are going to play a leading role in the next chapter of our nation's history, I will be telling you how I believe that we can actually begin this revolution, how we can execute the blueprint, how patriots around Britain can soon begin to work together to forever wrest away power from a corrupt and callous elite and deliver this power into the hands of the British people where it belongs. So, whether or not you've ever been a member of any political party, if you love Britain, if you hate the corruption of modern politics and want to be part of the change our nation needs, then it would be my immense privilege to meet you on the 14th and 15th of September in Barnsley. Do please come. But I suggest you get yourself a ticket quite quickly, because while we're all only going to be told exactly where within Barnsley the conference venue is very shortly before the event, because of obvious potential issues with organised hooliganism, if the venue becomes public too early, I understand that we're in quite a small venue and tickets will be limited so that everyone gets a chance to meet with and talk to some of the members of the leadership. To get a ticket, there'll be a link above this message if you're watching on Facebook, or below if you're watching on YouTube. I very much look forward to meeting you very soon, God willing. Thank you.